evening. Good evening, everybody. If I can have your attention, please, we'll get this 6:30 meeting on the road. It's 6:33 right now, and we're late. Thank you very much for being here this evening. I am Gwen Snook, the Homeowners Association President. Our CERT team has got a presentation with Kathy Drainville from the county tonight to tell you everything you need to know to be prepared for the coming hurricane season. I see an awful lot of new faces in here tonight, so I don't think all of you have been through a hurricane season, at least in this community. It is a little different than others. Let me give you a couple pieces of advice. This building is not a shelter at all. It's got way too much glass in it. The last hurricane, we lost some of these, and you don't want those falling down on your head. So if you are asked to evacuate, you are considered a mobile home by standards of hurricane preparedness. If you get an order to evacuate, you need to be ready to go to one of the shelters on the map that you should have gotten as you came in. You also need to be prepared to shelter in place in case things come up quickly. I mean, you feel like when you're here during a hurricane season that the damn hurricane is never going to get here. It's the only thing on television. And 2 weeks before, they're giving you a cone that's going to encompass the whole state, and 24 hours before, it changes course about 3 times, and you never know where it's going to be. But you have to be prepared in case you are at your house. I can tell you that in most cases, we do not lose power here. That means you still have water, but be prepared just in case. This little handy guide will tell you what kind of supplies you need to be prepared. It will tell you how best to be prepared, and Kathy's going to give you a lot more information tonight on the details. Here's another handy piece of advice, and I know you've all seen this. If you got your newcomer package from the Welcome Committee, there is a yellow emergency response plan file in there, yellow cover. In it is this little card. This is something that I need to have all of you fill out. This is for your phone number, your cell phone, your email, because the Homeowners Association learned at one of our hurricanes, I think it was Irma. Irma, okay, so Irma wasn't a big windstorm, but it was a lot of rain. And so after the emergency and the all clear was given for the county, the first thing everybody does is leave a shelter immediately. They want to get home. And you couldn't get in our park because there was so much water. But you couldn't go back to the shelter because it was closed now. So the idea was that we would put a message out to everybody's cell phone or laptop or whatever they got with them to tell them the situation as it stands here in our community. It is specific to our community. So it would tell you if there was high water, it would tell you if there was power outages, and so forth. There's one other piece of paper, I think it's in that same brochure, and you can also get it from the HOA office, and that is emergency shelters for people who have difficulties in getting around. They don't have transportation, they are in wheelchairs, and so forth. So the Citrus Connection does do pickups for people if you are a special needs patient like that. Just means that the added security is they will not bring you home and drop you off until it's safe. They actually send somebody to your location to make sure it's safe to drop you off at your house. Because otherwise, it doesn't matter if that shelter closes where you are, you're not going to get dumped off at your house and not have a way to get in. So those are all good things to know. Please fill this card out, put it in our basket on the HOA door. There's lots more information in that emergency response plan booklet. And I would just like to introduce Jim Patton now, who is our CERT team leader, and he will kick this meeting off. One other thing before I forget.
Go ahead.
2 other things, actually. We are recording this for, I don't know, what do we got in here, 200 people? I'll call it that, 180. Yeah. If we've got, whatever we have in here, we don't have everybody who should be here. I'm just telling you that. There are people not here tonight who should be. So we are videotaping this. We will have it on a YouTube channel and put the access point out for everybody so they can review it. If you forgot something and you want to look at it again and see Kathy's pretty face wherever she went in doing it, it's great. But it will be available for those who have not been here tonight. The other thing I'd like to point out is in the back, we have Laura Phillips, who is at a table back there, and she is in charge of our Neighbor to Neighbor program, which is a neighbors watching neighbors. It's just a helpful thing for those of you who are caregivers for people who have special needs, or if you are alone. You know what? It's just nice to know there's somebody that's checking in on you at some point during a day. She has all the details on it. We're glad to help you out with that. There is no charge for that. And now I will introduce Jim Patton of our CERT team. Thank you, Jim.
Hey, thanks, Gwen. Appreciate it. On your excuse me, on your agenda for tonight, you see a welcome committee with Bob and Chris Nelson. I am standing in for them because they are out of town on doing family arrangements with the situation up north. So we shared information and the things that we wanted to go over. Gwen alluded to it. This is the welcome packet that Bob and Chris Nelson put together for all new residents. In the past, they had done face-to-face meetings at your house with a new packet to gather the information. It's chocked full of everything you can think of, from activities to what's going on in Cypress Lakes, the social groups, the websites, anything you can think of that happens in Cypress Lakes. It's in this welcome packet, and they want to get that to you. During COVID, the one-to-one in-person meetings were impossible, as you well know, and then started in April when we opened part of the main hall here. As you know, that was restricted. In April 19th, did a meet and greet with 65 new residents. Any of those people from that meeting in here? Interesting. Maybe should be. So what I wanted to do before I start into delving into the welcome packet is I want to do a little survey of the room. How many of you in this room have been in Cypress Lakes for 6 months or less? Nice. Look at that. As you might know, we've done a record number of house sales and move-ins in the first 6 months of this year. So a record level. Who has been here 1 year or less? Some more? Nice, nice. How about 1 year to 3 years? Who's in the audience that's been here 1 to 3 years? Good representation, love it. How about greater than 3, close to 5 years? Has anybody been here 5 years? Wonderful, great. And you see they still come. Why? Just like Gwen had said. It's important to know, if you haven't lived in Florida or the Southeast US, what hurricanes are about and what people in Florida live with. And also that things change from year to year drastically. Gwen mentioned Irma. That was a wake-up call for a lot of us, and how close it actually came, and the actual stuff changes year to year, as do the storms, obviously. And you're going to find out a lot more about that tonight, what to expect for this year in Kathy's presentation. So it makes perfect sense for people that have been around a number of years in Cypress Lakes to be here. The Welcome Committee, as I said, has this folder that they go with everyone. The next meeting is going to be Monday, June 21st at 6:30 to 8:30 in the main hall here. And so those of you that actually physically do not have one of these, you are welcome to that meeting. At the end, we're going to have a sign-up table for that because we need RSVPs for that. So Bob and Chris know how many folders to prepare for. With the folder, Gwen had mentioned a couple of things that I was going to also mention. There's 3 key things in the welcome folder that have to do with hurricanes, storms, weather, and notifications. The first, Gwen alluded to, the alert postcard. That's the Polk County's storm notification system. And it's actually much more than that. It covers anything that's public safety notification in the county. Tornadoes, evacuations, boil order notices, gas leaks, et cetera, et cetera. So that's very important, number one, to get that filled out and make sure you're on that. And Gwen alluded to the Cypress Lakes 911 reverse notification system. Important too, for when and if you leave the community, you can get a call on your cell phone as to when it's safe to return. The third, she mentioned also the ERP, Emergency Response Plan. The HOA has spent a lot of time writing this disaster plan, which is included in here. It includes some preparation kits, checklists, and it also describes who does what when a storm happens. Make sure you look at that and read that and keep that for future reference. So with that in mind, let's now turn it over to Kathy Drainville. By the way, I just wanted to mention, Kathy is the Public Information Officer for Polk County, and she also manages all the CERT teams within Polk County. Our fearless leader.
Thank you. Good evening. It's good to see real faces. Anybody else in here sick of Zoom? Okay, it's nice to just have live bodies. I've done Zoom trainings, and I assume I'm talking to people, but I don't even know if anybody's listening, which may still be the same scenario tonight. I don't know if you're listening either, but at least you're present, okay? So again, my name is Kathy Drainville. I'm a public education officer with Polk County Fire Rescue, and I do coordinate the CERT teams for all of Polk County. We have over 600 volunteers in that program, 29 teams, and we're adding a bunch of new teams. COVID has really put us in the limelight, so we got all kinds of people signing up for training. We do have one training coming up in July. I know there's a few people in here signed up for that. It's almost full, and then my final class for the year is in October, and it's already halfway full. So if you're interested in joining the CERT team, you need to get in there and find out from Jim what you need to do, and go ahead and get registered before we're full. So we always like to start off telling a little bit about Polk County Fire Rescue. In case you didn't know, you live in Polk County, barely, but you're still in here. So we cover over 2,200 square miles, which is a big space, and we have close to 50 fire stations, 600 employees. Your nearest fire station is a Providence up the road here. That is your normal crew that normally responds when you have calls. And so many of you have used them, and they come here frequently to visit, and they also come for a chili cook-off each year or something. I think they're involved in that, probably to eat. That's probably why they come. But we respond to over 100,000 calls a year. About 90% of those calls are rescue or emergency medical calls, and about 10% are fire. And we like to explain, because people will often ask, I called because I had a medical emergency, and they sent the giant fire truck, and all my neighbors got up in my business. And I'm sure that don't happen here in Cypress Lakes, but some places it does. So we like to explain that most of our crew members are what's called dual certified. They are fire and EMS trained, and they can have a paramedic on every fire engine. So our fire engines are classified as ALS. Does anybody know what that stands for? Advanced life support, I heard someone say it. That means they can do everything for you on that fire truck that they can do for you on an ambulance, except transport you to the hospital. Because when we strap you on top of the fire truck and drive you down the street, that don't look good in the papers. So you still may have to wait for a ride, but we figure if you're having a medical emergency, you want us to send whoever can get there the quickest, so that's what we do. You might get a fire engine, you might get an ambulance, you might get a parade. You can just make up whatever cool story you want to tell your neighbors, because we're not going to tell them anything anyway. So, but one of our big jobs that we do in my department is to teach the public. That's why it's called public education, right? We teach the public how to make better choices to try to mitigate or get rid of some of the effects of disasters. Disasters are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. But if we make better planning choices and we're prepared, then the effects that those disasters have can be lessened. And so it's very important to be prepared for hurricane season. So how many of you are entirely new to Florida? Okay, so welcome. And I'm sure when your realtor sold you on Florida, we got beaches and sunshine and Mickey Mouse, right? Well, we also got mosquitoes and alligators and hurricanes. So you get the good and the bad. And so you've probably experienced the mosquitoes and the alligators. Anybody not experienced the alligators? And the snakes, yeah. I'm a native Floridian, so I just assume people know stuff, and I've learned through the years that they don't. You don't feed alligators, just FYI, okay? Or snakes either. But we have a lot of stuff in this state that we need to be prepared for.
I got one that eats in front of my house.
Yep. If there's a body of water in this state, there's an alligator in it. That's just a rule. Even probably perhaps sometimes your swimming pool, so you need to check that too, all right? So just something to be prepared for. So we're going to talk tonight about disaster preparedness, and we're really going to focus on hurricanes because hurricane season starts June the 2nd. Aren't you all excited? Plan your parties now, okay? And we're going to tell you all about how to plan that party, because everyone needs to have a personal disaster plan. That's what the focus of this whole thing is. So how many of you in here have a personal disaster plan? My CERT members better raise their hands. I'm looking. Okay, if you did not raise your hand, you now have homework. So that's what this is all about. We're going to tell you all sorts of stuff to plan for, and it's important that you have a plan. Write your plan down and tell your family members what it is so everybody knows what the plan is, okay? So we're going to jump in to start off a little bit focused on hurricanes. This is our predictions for the 2021 year. Now, predictions is nothing but what man thinks is going to happen, okay? And as we have learned many times in our area, we can do all the predictions we want, but Mother Nature does not abide by our rules. So June 2nd starts hurricane season, and it runs through the end of November, but that doesn't mean we can't get one before then, and it doesn't mean we won't get one after. That's just when the situation and the out in the ocean and all the weather things are ideal for hurricane development. So that's just the prime time of year. We've already had some activity out there in the Atlantic last week, so we have already got some activity going on, and we haven't quite made it to June yet. But they're forecasting 17 named storms, and we averaged 12, and they're predicting 4 major hurricanes. Those are hurricanes that are stage 4 or 5, and we're going to go over what those stages are. So these are what is predicted. You see what the average is. So we're expecting a busy year. Now, not all of those storms are going to come here, but as we teach in this, it only takes one. If it comes to your house, you have a disaster. So you need to be planning for that and prepared at all times. Here's the names for this year. Okay, these names rotate. This list rotates out every 5 years, and the list will show back up 5 years from now, unless one of those names becomes a Category 4 or 5 storm, then they retire that name. So we'll never have another Katrina, Charlie, Jean, or Francis, or Andrew. Those names are gone, and they'll replace them with something else. So if your name is on here, don't tell anybody. If your neighbor's name is on there, get ready, okay? So there they are, and be prepared. And hopefully we won't get very far through them, but sometimes there have been a couple of years where we go through. Now this is international, kind of use these. It's not just us here. So they have gone through these names and ended up in some Greek alphabet or something. So hopefully that won't happen. So here is some terminology that you need to be aware of and familiar with when you start hearing these terms on the news. When you hear the word hurricane watch, that means that within 48 hours, you can expect hurricane activity in your area. Basically, that should trigger your disaster plan that you're going to create if you don't already have one. When they say there's a watch, that means something is coming and you need to activate your plan. When you get into a hurricane warning, We now have 36 hours. That basically just means you're running out of time. Now, has anybody in here ever gone to Publix to get your hurricane supplies at the 36-hour mark? There ain't nothing there except ice cream, maybe, and that's not a good item to purchase to prepare for a hurricane, okay? Because that has to stay frozen, and electricity is required for that. So you don't want to wait till 36 hours out to say, maybe I should go get some supplies, okay? In fact, you want to start doing that today, right now today, and we'll talk about that a little later too. So once that warning of 36 hours, once we hit the warning zone, you should be finishing up your disaster plan and preparing to hunker down. Now, I want everybody to say that. Hunker down. Okay, that's a Polk County term, and you said it real well. Say that again.
Hunker down.
So you got that accent in there? Hunker down, okay? I have an accent. I'm very aware of it, and I try to be conscious of that when I'm up here talking, but it will slip out from time to time, and you will hear that Polk County hunker down, okay? So that's where you're riding out the storm. Whatever you're going to do, you need to be ready to do it. Not out on the roads, running around, looking for stuff. You should be finished and ready to go. And then you're going to hear the words tropical depression and tropical storm. This is when we have hurricanes starting to develop. And these terms are all based on the miles per hour of the wind speed for the hurricane. Up to 38 miles per hour is considered a tropical depression. Once we cross between 39 to 73 miles per hour, that is now considered a tropical storm. What that means is it's getting bigger and it's getting faster, okay? And then once it crosses up into 74 miles per hour and up, those are classified as actual hurricanes. And we have categories 1 through 5. And if you look here, this shows you the wind speeds that moves that up through the classifications. The bigger the number, the bigger the storm, the faster the wind. But even with a category 1, 74 to 95 miles per hour, that's pretty fast for the wind to blow. And it can do significant damage just in a category 1, especially if it's hitting you directly and it's sitting there for a long time. Because not only do you have the wind, what else comes with the storm? Rain. Yeah. Heavy rain and tornadoes can spin off of that hurricane, and all of that stuff can impact you. Anybody here back in 2004 when we had Charlie, Jean, and Francis? 3 in a row. We barely recovered from the first one, and we got 2 more. The whole county, all 3 went straight through here, and one wasn't supposed to. It shifted at the last minute and came to see us. Which again, you can watch those little spaghetti strings on the TV, but again, those are our predictions and we don't always get that right. So you have to be prepared. And with the 2000, in that year, there's Charlie right there. Charlie was a category 4 hurricane when it hit us. And we had one that moved really slow and had a lot of rain and it hung out here for a while. And what happens when we get a lot of heavy rain, what happens to our trees? The roots get weak, and then the next hurricane came through and just blew everything over. We had debris everywhere, all over the county. People were without power for weeks, and a lot of devastation. You can still see tarps on roofs in this county in certain places if you drive around, because a lot of roofs got blown away, and some people have still not repaired them, and that was in 2004. Likewise, if you were to go visit Louisiana right now, they haven't recovered from Katrina either. Now, Katrina made its initial landfall down in Miami, because Miami gets to see everything, right? And it was only a category 1. Then when it went back out, it hit up in Louisiana as a category 5. So that's why it's on here as a category 1 in our state, but it totally demolished up there. And so these are things just to point out how much damage it can do and why it's so important to be prepared. So when we start talking about your disaster plan, there are some things you need to consider. The first thing is, what is your personal risk? If you have mobility issues, or you have someone in your family that has mobility issues, or requires oxygen, or some sort of electricity to sustain your life within a 24-hour period of time. These are things that matter, right? Because potentially when a hurricane comes, you're going to lose all utilities. Now, Gwen said that luckily that doesn't happen a lot here, but it can. Hurricane Irma, I was without power for 2 weeks. I didn't even go back home because I didn't have air. So my best friend was whoever's air conditioning was working for 2 weeks. So, but you need to determine what are your risks. And are you in a flood zone? Now, I looked as I drove in tonight. Y'all's water is kind of low right now. But I know in Hurricane Irma, it was not. The water was up. And so these are things you need to think about. If the water comes up and you can't get in or you can't get out, do you have what you need to sustain yourself at home? These are things you need to think about. If you, and then there's going to potentially be those tornadoes. Tornadoes we don't get as much warning for. We know a hurricane's coming. You're going to hear about it. And I encourage you not to just shut the news off. I'm so sick of hearing about that. I've heard about it for days. Yeah, but it's getting closer and you probably should be listening. Tornadoes, they come at a very little warning sometimes. So, but you can consider what impact is potentially going to have on you. What is your risk? We need a canoe. Yeah, a canoe. So then you want to develop that evacuation plan. If I have to leave, where am I going? Some people say, I'm just going to hit the road. Traveling is not a good plan because a storm can travel too, and it might decide to go with you. So you don't want to just be driving the roads. If you're going to evacuate and leave, you need to, one, leave early. Anybody ever been on I-4? Anybody ever been on I-4 during rush hour? Or US 1 going up the state? Anybody ever been there when everybody in the state of Florida is trying to get out? Okay, if you wait till the last minute, you ain't getting out. You're going to spend the hurricane stuck in traffic on I-4. So do not wait if you plan to leave. Leave early and have a destination. Go somewhere safe. Get there, and what do? Hunker down. We're not going to sit in our car driving the roadways. That is not a good plan. And you need to have your go bag. Go bag, that's what I'm gonna grab. It's at the door, it's ready to go. That's why it's called a go bag, okay? I'm not gonna take 3 days to pack it and pick out which shoes I want. Now trust me, I'm a shoe person. On my normal trips, I got a bag for shoes. But when I've got a go bag, all I need is the tennis shoes and an extra change of dry ones in my bag. I don't pack all of them, so they may not match, but I have to sacrifice, you know. So it's all about priorities then. So a go bag, you can grab it and get out the door and go. Change your clothes, your personal, some toiletry items. If you need medications, make sure they're in there. And your important papers and documents need to go with you. And it's not, you know, we're not taking a whole set of luggage here. A go bag means we can grab it and run. Because even if it's not a hurricane, you might need to get out quickly for some other type of disaster. You can grab that and get out and have that stuff with you. And then follow evacuation orders if they're given. Gwen mentioned this earlier. If the official people are telling you you need to get out, then guess what? You need to get out. That's all there is to it. And you can stand in your house, but it's not going to hold it to the ground because you're standing there, okay? If it comes and blows away, you're just going to blow away with it. So if they're telling you you need to get out, you need to get out. And that's why you need to have a plan, right? So I know where I'm going to go. And I'm not just standing here trying to figure it out in the middle of a disaster. Because what happens to our cognitive thinking when we find ourselves stressed out in a disaster? It goes down. So that is not the time we want to be trying to figure stuff out. We need to already have it figured out and in place.
What if they don't want to leave and they insist on staying?
If they don't want to leave, Polk County does not have mandatory evacuations. We do not make it mandatory. We strongly encourage you to evacuate, but we do not mandatorily make people evacuate. So that's up to you, which is why when they're telling you you need to get out, it's for your own safety. And that's one thing this talks about. Find out if you live in an evacuation zone. We don't mandatorily make people leave. However, it's important for you to know that when wind speeds reach over, it is not safe, and we will not put our crew out on the road. So if your plan is to sit there and wait for us to come and get you, that's not a good plan either, okay? Because when the wind speeds get that high, it's not safe. So If you aren't going to be safe in your home, if you live alone, or we're going to go over, if you live in anything other than a concrete structured home, our recommendation is to evacuate. That is what the county tells you. And then plan several routes, know how to get where you're going to go. Sometimes just getting out of the neighborhood can be a problem, right? So we need to know how to get out of here and how to get where we're going, and have a backup plan in case for some reason that route is closed or unavailable to you. And then plan for your pets. We're going to go into that a little bit more later. And we want to talk a little bit about the water safety, and we already talked about if you're in a flood area and all that stuff that lives in the water, when the water rises, what rises with it? All that stuff that lives in the water. So it's likely that those alligators and snakes are swimming on your doorstep. And we see it on the news, the alligators knocking on your door. Another thing, if you aren't a native to Florida, when the alligator's knocking on your door, don't answer that door, okay? You are not supposed to shoot them, no. Call animal control. Yeah. You're not supposed to shoot them. Let me just say that. You're not supposed to. And if you do, you don't want anybody to find it. So you ain't supposed to shoot them.
Excuse me, do you close the gates once everything's blocked off and the gates are wide open, or like when you have people coming in and loitering and stuff like that?
Do you guys shut your gates when you're in evacuation? They stay open. So, and again, I don't think anybody's ever had any problem with looters coming in here or anything like that. Usually, if you're in a disaster, so is everybody else. They're too busy trying to get their own stuff fixed than to come worry about taking yours. But you do, lock your house, keep your stuff safe like you normally would do if you're going to leave. But you never go into floodwaters. For one, they may have critters in there that you don't want to be interacting with. Also, if power lines are down, those waters could be electrified, electrically charged. Don't want to get in there. And there's all sorts of bacteria that can be in there. Sewage can overflow and flood into those waters. So you don't want to be walking around in that. And it's inevitable. Every year we have a storm and the water rises up. People's got water in their yards and their ditches are full. Where do you think their kids are? Playing in the water. And I grew up, I played in the ditch, I played in the mud puddles, but it's not a good thing, and I'm an adult, so now I tell you, don't do that. So don't play in the water, and it's important to know that children can drown in as little as 2 inches of water. So you want to make sure that you're monitoring. If your grandkids are there, children are there, pay attention, because they can fall down in a ditch and they can drown.
If you have like a float, and like you said about electricity, if you're on a rubber float and you're going out and like, let's say they stay behind and you're on a float, can they still with the electricity blow the float?
It's not good. It's not going to blow your float up, but you don't want to be you got to get in the water at some point to get in the float. So you don't need to be out in the water at all. And if you see downed power lines, you just stay away from that, because chances are they are electrified and you could get electrocuted. So in assembling your disaster supplies, now on your map also, if you didn't pick one up, I encourage you to pick one up before you leave here tonight. It's going to be up here shortly too. It's got a list of some supplies. In your welcome packet that they give you here at Cypress Lakes, there's a list of supplies. You may have personal items that you need to have for your supplies. You could have all kinds of supplies. The important thing is figure out what you need to sustain yourself and make sure you have that on hand. Food and water. We got to eat. We got to have water, right? Anybody know how much water per person per day? 1 gallon per person per day. Now, somebody told me earlier today a 24-pack of water equals 3 gallons. I don't do math, so somebody told me that, and I just believed it because it sounded good. So that means if you got a 24-pack of water, that's good for one person for how many days? Okay, see, that's bigger math than what I normally will do. But 1 gallon per person per day, and that's for your drinking and like brushing your teeth and stuff, not to be cleaning. Some people in here clean for stress relief or something. I don't do that either, and I don't know why anybody wants to clean when the power's not working and it's hot and the air's not running. But if you're that person, don't use your drinking water to clean. People will say they'll fill up their bathtubs with water. That's great for flushing the toilets or cleaning if you feel the need to clean. But don't drink water out of the bathtub or the toilet for that matter. Don't drink it out of there either, okay? Because once that water's sitting in the tub, it's automatically already contaminated, got bacteria growing in it, and it's not clean to drink. So if you drink it, you're consuming whatever's in it, and we all know then what happens when we get bacteria in our bodies. Not a good place to be when the power and there's no electricity, no air conditioning, and the toilet don't flush, okay? So don't drink water out of the bathtub. Have your bottled water for every person in your home. And make sure you're drinking enough water and staying hydrated, okay? Because unfortunately, hurricanes don't happen when it's cool. It's always hot. So when the electricity goes out, we don't have air. It's 150 degrees in your house. And so you need to be drinking water and keeping your hygiene, keeping your water intake good. You also want to fill your car up with gas before the storm, okay? Because what happens after the storm oftentimes? Can't find gas. The gas trucks can't get in to replenish, and the people who are necessary to be out there working are having to fill up their trucks, but you won't get gas. So fill your car up and beforehand. And then after the storm is over, unless you have a reason to be out and about, don't be out and about, because you're wasting your gas that you might not be able to replenish, and you're out in what's already a chaotic situation, just being in the way, right? Now, if there's anything we learned from COVID, we all know how to shelter in place, don't we? All right, so we made it through a whole year of doing that. You can make it through a few days and calm your cabin fever and not be out rubbernecking to see what's going on, okay? If you don't have a reason to be out, don't be out. And then have some cash on hand in small bills, because oftentimes in a response recovery, the stores will open up so that they can get you supplies, but they don't have power, so they can't run their cash registers, and they only take cash because they can't take your debit card, and they can't make change for a $100 bill because they don't have the money. So have small bills so that if you need to get something afterwards, you can do that. Now, I'm not telling you to go withdraw your entire life savings here, okay? A few $100 in your pocket so you can get gas, you can get supplies if you need them afterwards in small amounts. Medicine and prescriptions, we did mention having those. You also want to make sure if there's any specific medical things that you need to have on hand. If you're diabetic, you need your glucometer, your needles, all that stuff. Make sure you have that supplied. And then a radio with AM/FM capability and batteries. We all have cell phones, right? And we rely on those. But if we don't have electricity, we can't charge it, and eventually it will die, and we won't have it anymore. But if you have a battery-operated AM/FM radio, you can stay connected with what is going on. And it is very important in the midst of a disaster that we stay connected and know what's going on around us, especially if you're stuck in here and can't get out. You need to know what resources are out there and what is happening around you in the rest of the county. There are weather radios, and actually someone told me, and I forget the dates, I think this weekend, through next week, starting Friday, is tax-free hurricane preparedness. You can go buy your supplies and you don't have to pay taxes on them this weekend. So that's a good time to go buy them. And they will have weather radios and AM/FM radios. And on your map are some AM/FM frequencies for you to plug that tells you so you can access those local information. But batteries, have extra batteries. Flashlights, and have extra batteries for your flashlights. We do not encourage you to use candles for a lighting source. Now, I love my candles, and I like to sit and burn my candle when I'm sitting in a room, but that is not a primary light source. They are a fire hazard. If you have kids there, they'll knock them over. If you have pets there, they'll knock them over. If you fall asleep and forget about it, your house will burn down. So that is not a good source for light. Get flashlights.
Anybody that doesn't have AM/FM radio, you want one, start looking, because they are extremely difficult to find. You think everybody used to have, they don't anymore. We ended up going to Amazon, because that was the only place we could find them.
Yeah, Amazon has everything. If they don't have it, you don't need it, right? So, but yes, start looking because you need to have one of those. And even if it's, the old alarm clocks that have a radio on them, if that's all you can come up with a battery in it, that will work. You just got to be tuned into the right station. These are all things, of course, there's a can opener too, right? We're going to encourage you to get canned foods, non-perishable foods, because you might not be able to refrigerate it, and you might not be able to cook because the electricity may be out. And now if you're going to use a grill, that's great because it always happens when we have big storms, the freezers go out, you got all this food thawing out, the whole neighborhood gets together every night and just barbecues everything we got. You eat real good for 2 or 3 days, okay? And then it's all gone. But if you're going to use a grill, use it properly. Don't put it in your house, okay? And it has to be said because it always happens. If you have a generator, who's got a generator? Everybody look around, see where to go? Okay? If you have a generator, run it according to the manufacturer's rules. Do not put it in your home. Inevitably, it will always have someone will have a death after a storm because somebody put their generator inside and then they asphyxiate themselves. So don't do things the wrong way. Be smart. If you're going to use a generator, use it properly, okay? Yeah, and get enough gas for your generator too, keeping that in mind because you won't be able to access that either. So in any other state, if you ever sit through a disaster prepared presentation, they're going to tell you to be prepared for 3 days. Consider 3 days, no water, no electricity, no nothing, and you need everything to sustain yourself for 3 days. In the state of Florida, we changed this last year to 7 days because the storms we have here, that is what happens. You need to prepare for 7 days. 7 days you may be without power. Now again, like I said, Hurricane Irma, and it didn't have a lot of damage in my yard, but I lived out in the forest, the power lines were out for 2 weeks. I wasn't even on the grid, And so these are things you have to think about. 7 days. You may be stuck in here and can't get out, and nobody can get into you, okay? So that water, if you need a gallon a day, how many gallons does one person need? 7 days. So how many gallons is that? I know it's math, people, but come on. 7 gallons per person, okay? So if you got 2 people in your house, how many gallons is that? 14. All right, that's all the math we're going to do. You get the idea, okay? So make sure you have that stored in your home in a safe location and your non-perishable food with that manual can opener. You can buy pop lids too. Those are nice. But if you didn't and you got 200 cans of tuna and no can opener, you ain't got nothing, right? You're going to be entertaining your neighbors while you're outside trying to figure out how to open that can of tuna, okay? And then again, the battery-powered radio, flashlights, do not use candles. We always like to tell everybody, too, every year it's a good idea to just review over all your insurance policies, your health insurance, your homeowner's insurance, your car insurance, whatever you got. Make sure you have the coverage you need and that you're not paying for stuff you don't need. So if your homeowners in Florida, most of the time, includes hurricane coverage simply because this is Florida. And ain't nobody going to sell you a house if you didn't get that coverage on there. But flood insurance is not usually included. That's extra. So you want to make sure you have everything you need in your policy and review over that each year and make sure you've got the coverage that you need. And then keep those important documents in your go bag. And I tell you, get you a Ziploc bag and put your important documents in the Ziploc bag. Your insurance stuff, your driver's license, social security card, medical information, whatever's important stuff you need to have, put it in a Ziploc bag and seal it. It slides right down in your go bag, doesn't take up a lot of space, but it can save you a whole lot of headache when you're trying to deal with the insurance company after a storm. You also can do a visual documentation of your home, a video recording. Take pictures, save that on a flash drive, and put that in your Ziploc bag too. It's protected from water, and it's not taking up a lot of space, and that can be very helpful for you when filing claims with your insurance company. Also, somebody mentioned this morning about FEMA. Everybody familiar with FEMA? FEMA shows up after a storm usually. It's a good idea if they're here and you had any kind of expense incurred at all to go file papers with them. You might not get anything, but you might. During Hurricane Irma, a lot of people got a food reimbursement because they lost all their food when their freezers went out and stuff. So if you have any type of effect from the storm, it doesn't hurt to go follow up and apply with FEMA. And one thing that the CERT team does here, all our CERT teams, when the storm has passed and it is safe to do so, and if they are available, CERT teams will go through their communities and do damage assessments. And they feed that information to me, and it goes directly up into the Emergency Operations Center's computer system. And we keep track of all that. Because in order for your area to be classified as a disaster area, which opens up all that FEMA assistance and other resources to us, we have to hit a certain level of damage. So every little thing helps reach that level. So CERT teams are out doing damage assessments and sending that information up, and that all helps us as a county to meet that goal. And then strengthen your home. Fix your home, prepare your home. Now, when we get into sheltering here, as I've already said, if anybody in here living in a concrete structured home, I didn't think so. Which means what, based on what we've already said? Everybody needs to be evacuating, right? That is our plan, right? Now, I know you're not all going to, because I know statistically how this works, but I'm going to tell you you need to. So, but even before you leave, you need to get your house ready. If you have hurricane shutters or plywood that you put over your windows, whatever, get that stuff up. Now, some HOAs have rules about when you can put that stuff up and how quickly it has to come down. So I don't know what the rules are here in Cypress Lakes, or if there is some type of rule for that, but you need to figure that out. Do you guys have any rule on that? Saying just put it up whenever they want? Don't even do it? She said it's not going to matter. If your house blows away, who cares if you covered the windows? So it's up to you. Are they allowed to do it? Okay, well, Gwen will find that out for you guys. So some HOAs will let you put up stuff, but you can only put it up like 5 days or so before the storm, and it has to come down within so long after the storm.
72 hours after the storm is supposed to take them down.
Well, it's different in every different community. Some communities have different rules, and some communities have rules as to what you can use. So if you're going to put some up, even if maybe you're going to be gone during hurricane season, you're not going to be here, and you need those put up, you might want to make arrangements with a neighbor or a friend or somebody to do that for you and let them know how to access that to get that done. Anything that is not secured in your yard needs to be picked up and taken inside, because it can blow away and through your neighbor's windows or your windows, okay? So those little garden gnomes that you have in your garden, they look really cute in your garden, not so cute when they fly through your neighbor's window, okay? So pick up all that stuff and secure it. Patio furniture, if your patio furniture blows away into your neighbor's yard, possession is 90% ownership. So now they got a nice new patio furniture and you got nothing. So secure that stuff, okay? Trim your trees. Now, I don't know if you guys trim your own trees or if you have a tree company, but if you got tree limbs that are about to fall down or that have overgrown a little bit, you need to trim that stuff before the hurricane comes, or it'll trim it for you, and then it'll end up in your roof. Now, we tell you, don't wait till the week before the hurricane is coming to trim everything you got and throw it on the roadside and expect somebody to come and get it, okay? Because that probably ain't gonna happen, and then it's just blowing all over the neighborhood. So make sure you keep that stuff, get it ready, trim it back, so you don't have to worry about that.
Do we need permission to put any kind of like shutters or wood?
That's what Gwen's gonna find out.
Okay, and what if we live right next to like there's woods and trees that's not taken care of?
If they're not yours, don't trim them. That's the responsibility for whoever owns them. So if you have concerns about that, you would want to pursue that with whoever owns them. I mean, you don't need to go cut down the whole forest. But if you have, right, good luck. Evacuate. Okay, that's evacuate. That's why you evacuate, because we can't, there's going to be trees. I'll tell you, during Hurricane Irma, I was in the EOC, so I was safe where I was, but I lived in what was called Blue Jordan Forest It is a forest. It was a wildlife preserve. I have my house there right in the middle of a bunch of trees. I didn't put up, I figured if my house was still there when I came back, well, good for me. So if a Category 5 hurricane came through there, it was going to be gone, and all the trees were going to be gone with it. So, but you need to prepare, at least bring your stuff in and do what you can to protect your home. And move your vehicle to a safe location. If you're evacuating, you should be taking it with you, I'm assuming, right? You should be in it. Evacuating on foot is not a good idea, okay? And help your neighbors. We already talked about that. You guys have several programs in place here already to do that. Help your neighbors. If you know you got a neighbor that lives by themselves, have limitations, can't get out and get supplies, help your neighbors. Just be kind, right? Something else we learned from COVID, right? Just be nice, right? I shouldn't have to teach that for disaster preparedness, but just be nice, all right? And then when we talked about the medications, in this, if I know that most of us, anybody here maybe take a few medications every now and then, maybe a couple of things here and there, okay? And like when your prescriptions are due for a refill, I know for me, I forget to go refill them, and I'm like, oh, I remember, and they tell me, well, you can't refill it because it's not due today. Yeah, but I'm not going to remember tomorrow, and I'm here today. So when we are going into a state of impending of disaster or emergency, the state lifts those requirements, and you can go get your prescriptions refilled early so that you have enough to get you through the impending storm. Now, you're probably not going to be able to do that over the phone. You're going to physically have to go to the pharmacy, and you want to do that early on to make sure you get your prescriptions refilled. You don't want to run out of medications, because after the storm, if the pharmacy can't access their computers, they're not going to give you medication. So you want to make sure you have everything refilled to get you through whatever's coming. And then again, any special things you might need. In a first aid kit's, of course, always something to have in your supplies, right? First aid supplies, anything you might need. We all sunscreen. Sunscreen's always good to have, especially in Florida. And then, as I said earlier, write down that plan and share your plan with the rest of your family. I mean, unless you don't like them and you plan on leaving without them. But the plan works best if everybody knows what it is, and we all can have our job assigned, and we get in the car and we go. And again, keeping in mind any special needs that people may have, mobility limitations and those sorts of things when you are planning your evacuation plan. And have a contact list. Again, we all rely on our phones, right? Does anybody even know anybody's phone number anymore? If your phone dies, we're all in trouble. I don't even know my own phone number most of the time. So you need to have the important numbers written down, old school, pen and paper. Write them down, stick them in your little Ziploc baggie with your important stuff so that you have phone numbers to reach people. And it's good to have an out-of-the-area emergency contact person. So we can have a disaster here, and everybody that lives here in this area is affected. So if communications are down, we can't reach each other, right? And if I don't know where my people are, am I going to be of any use to anybody else? So we need to find our own people, right? So we can't call each other, but if we all can call Aunt Sue in Kalamazoo, she can be our telecommunications operator. And she can tell us, yep, Kathy called and she's going down to Publix. And everybody gets the same message, and we can all go find each other. All right? So that's important to have that out-of-the-area person who isn't necessarily affected by the disaster so that we can maintain some sort of communication with our families. Okay, so I already told you that Polk County does not require, we do not do mandatory evacuations, but we encourage anybody in a manufactured home, mobile home, RV, homes that can be impacted by strong winds. Do you qualify for any of those? Okay, we recommend you to evacuate. Or in a flooding rain, low-lying areas, you get floods out here. Do you qualify there? Okay, so here are the 5 options. Now, I want you to open up your map if you got one. Take a look at it. We're going to look at that. The 5 options. Number 1 would be to shelter in place, but you don't live in a concrete structured home, so that's not really a good option for you. So your second best option would be to evacuate to a friend or family who lives in a concrete structured home. Don't go down the street to your neighbor, because that's not helping, okay? Now, whoever that's going to be, they need to know you're coming, because you're making a plan, right? So you need to let them know, hey, I plan to come stay with you. Is that okay? Because they may evacuate and you ain't got nowhere to go. You also want to make sure you like that person that you're going to go stay with. Because if the power goes out and it gets really hot and we don't have air conditioning and we get kind of irritable and you already don't like that person, you know, we all have those family members that we see them for Thanksgiving or Christmas and we don't really care if we see them again for another year. Yeah, that's probably not where you want to go stay, okay? The third option would be evacuate the area, and we talked about that. Have somewhere to go, get out early, and get to your destination and stay there for the duration of the storm. Your fourth option would be to evacuate to a hotel or motel. But you can't always just have like an open room waiting for you, right? And I guarantee you, you aren't the only person attempting that option, so you may be driving a long time before you find a hotel room. And depending on, during Hurricane Andrew, which was back in 1992, I was just graduated. I was fixing to start college, and I live over on the other side of the county, and I was working at the Wendy's restaurant on 27, where everybody was leaving Miami, and people were looking for a hotel. There were no hotels till somewhere way past Georgia, and this was 2-3 days before the storm got here. So looking for a hotel is not always going to be an easy find, and depending on your standard of living, you may you may not want to just stay in any hotel, right? So keep that in mind. Also, if you have pets or special needs, and not all hotels can accommodate that either. And then the fifth option, and what we say fifth and final, because this is not the Ritz-Carlton here, is to evacuate to one of these public shelters. So if you look at this map, that's the front of it. This map is blue. If you have any map anywhere in your possession that is not blue for 2021, you need to throw it out because they're no longer good. We change these every year so that we have the most current information. And if you look on here, all this map has numbers. That's Polk County, by the way. That's where you live. Okay. On their numbers correspond to the numbers in the corner and tell you where that shelter is located. They are all in school gymnasiums. Okay. And on the back of this map, the same numbers are there, and it tells you how to find that shelter from the nearest main road. Now, we encourage you to find a couple on there that are in your proximity to where you might be and figure out how to find them now while there's not a storm, while the road signs are still in place. Figure out how to get there in case you need to get there at some point in time. On the front, you'll also notice this box right here. It says, do not proceed to any shelter until you have confirmed that it is open and operating. We do not automatically open every single shelter all at once. We open them based on a need, and as they need to, they will open more. So before you proceed to one, you want to confirm that it's actually open. In order to do that, right here, the Citizens Information Line, do you see that on your map? Put that in your phone and save it. If you have questions during a storm about roads that are open or closed, businesses that are open, and what shelters are working, anything that's storm related, you can call that hotline. There's a room full of people answering those phone calls and helping you out. Please do not call 911 because they don't know. And so they are going to have to transfer you to that line themselves. And now you have held up the 911 dispatch center for someone who may have a true 911 emergency. So please don't call 911 to find out if a shelter is open. Call the Citizens Information Line that is right there. Also on here, there's a bunch of PGTV. That's the county's television. Anybody ever watch that? I didn't think so. But anyway, it's on there. And then Alert Polk, you've already heard about Alert Polk. It's on our map too. And we encourage everyone to get registered for that. You can register whatever phone you want the message sent to, your landline, your cell phone, or both. Because if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, you're probably in bed asleep. And if a tornado touches, you need those notifications. So please get registered with that. Also on the back down here is a lot of information. that tells you about sources of emergency information. There are radio frequencies on there. Anybody in here do amateur ham radio operators? Any amateur radio operators in here? Okay. Well, there are some in your community, I'm pretty sure. And they are able to send messages through amateur radio. And there are always 2 people at the Emergency Operations Center in Auburndale during any activation monitoring those frequencies to get any information, any messages that are coming in. So there are frequencies on this map for people who might need to access that stuff as well. So I want to talk about the special needs program. You heard Gwen talk briefly about that before. On this map, you'll notice there are three shelters that have a little heart next to them. Oh, there was 2. I don't know where the other one is, but there it is. That heart indicates that is a special needs shelter, which means it is guaranteed, it has generator backup to guarantee the power throughout the duration of the sheltering. Okay. It is ran by the Department of Health nursing staff and Polk County employees. And we have medical equipment in those shelters, oxygen, extra supplies in case the person runs out of theirs. We have all that stuff available. We have a doctor that will make rounds as needed through those shelters in case somebody needs to refill something or has some medical issue come up. We have access to a doctor. This is for people who have special needs, who need the easiest way. If you need electricity to sustain your life within a 24-hour period of time for some reason, okay, then you qualify to go to a special needs shelter. Now, you pre-register for these shelters, and transportation can also be provided to get you to that shelter. So we like to encourage you, if you yourself or if you know of someone who could potentially need this, get registered. You don't have to go, we will not make you. But what happens is when the shelters activate, they call every single person that is registered that needs transportation and ask them, do we need to come and get you? And then they make those arrangements to get that person to the shelter. If you didn't register, guess what? You ain't getting a call. You don't have to go. But if you don't register at all, you don't even have the option. So if you know someone, get them registered. When they register, they get a letter telling them which of those 3 shelters they have been assigned to, so they know where they're going to be going. They can let their family know where they're going to be. And then they pack their go bag and they're ready to go when the transportation shows up to get them. Regular shelters, they open to give you a safe place to stay. When the storm is over, they close and you have to get out. Doesn't matter if your house blew away, regular shelters are shutting down. Their job is to keep you safe during the storm. Special needs shelters, they remain operational until we have found somewhere for every person to either return home or be placed somewhere so that they have electricity and their needs are maintained. So it's very important. You register with the County Emergency Management. There's the number. It's also on the map down here. And there's special needs program. The number is down there. Get registered. And if the person has a caregiver, their caregiver needs to go with them to the shelter. You don't just go drop grandma off and leave her till the storm's gone, okay? You go with her and you take care of her. But make sure that you get those people registered. Also on this map, you'll notice there's 3 shelters that have little paw prints next to them. Those are pet-friendly shelters. Anybody have a pet? Our pets are our family, right? My kids grew up, so I don't have kids or pets. I don't want anything in my house that thinks I'm supposed to feed it, okay? So, but if you have a pet, a lot of people will not leave if they can't take their pet. So we have now 3 pet-friendly shelters in Polk County. You can go and take your pet. They are people shelters, but you can bring your pet. Okay, and then you are responsible to take care of your pet, and you need to bring all that you need to do that when you come to the shelter. Bring their food and their water, okay? You don't just drop Fluffy off and come back and pick her up when the storm is over. You get to stay and take care of Fluffy, okay? You want to make sure that they have a carrier approved so that you can contain your animal. You don't just have a bunch of animals running all over the shelter, okay? Your shot records, and I encourage people to take a picture with your pet, so if you somehow get separated from your pet, it's easier to relocate you to your pet. We take cats, dogs, and birds. Cats, dogs, and birds. And by birds, I mean a little bird that lives in a cage that wants a cracker, right? Not chickens and ducks. Alligators, snakes, reptiles, we don't take those. Cows and horses, just turn them loose. We don't take them either, okay? And apparently, that needs to be clarified in Polk County, all right? Cats, dogs, and birds. Not really. I don't know. Tell them it's a cat and leave it in the box. I don't know. But if you're that crazy cat lady that's got 25 cats and you can get them all in a carrier and take them to the shelter and take care of them, God bless you. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand if that's you, but God bless you. We do like to point out that with COVID-19, obviously that has changed things everywhere. There are some extra precautions they're taking in shelters, but at this is the current precautions. They are encouraging social distancing, but not policing for it, okay? And they're monitoring everyone in the shelter. They are not checking temperatures, but if you start to present symptoms that are COVID-like, there is a designated area for you to go, which may be in the corner, because I don't know. It's not, we don't got private rooms, so don't say, I feel COVID, I need a private guest suite, okay? That ain't happening. And they will have masks and hand sanitizers available, but they are not mandatory, okay? And again, isolating anybody who displays symptoms. But you might be isolated with everybody else that also displayed a symptom, so I'm not sure how good that's going to be for you. But take what you need to the shelter. They do sometimes have cots. In the special needs shelters, they have cots. You can take an air mattress. We encourage you to take a little air mattress. Don't bring a king-sized air mattress for everybody in your family. There's not that much space. Don't bring your recliner chair, okay? And don't bring your refrigerator. Bring the basic things that you need, okay? They do provide meals in the shelters because they are located in schools. The school board helps run those, and the staff do come in and they provide meals in the shelter. You can bring your Cheerios and cornflakes, but you ain't gonna have nowhere to refrigerate milk. Medicine, if you have medicine that requires refrigeration, you probably need to sign up for a special needs shelter, because there's no guarantee. And during Hurricane Irma, one of our regular shelters lost power because they do not have generator backup. So, but bring what you need. We do provide basic things, but if you arrive before the toilet paper truck does, you might not have any toilet paper. So bring yourself some, okay? And the last slide I have up here is, again, about Alert Polk, and you've already heard about that, which means it must be very, very, very important because you've heard it like 4 or 5 times already. So make sure you get registered for Alert Polk. Now, I'm going to ask to my CERT people, are you all guys all registered with Alert Polk, right? Y'all better raise your hands. Okay. All right. So if you're not, you better get registered and make sure that you are prepared. So a lot of information that we talked about tonight. Hurricanes come, we can survive them. They are scary, but we can survive them. Make sure you have a plan in place to protect yourself and your family, get your home prepared, and have a place to go. And we're going to do what when we get there? Hunker down and ride it out. So thank you for having me out. Does anybody have any more questions? Can you go with him with a mic? I can't hear. We don't have that system in place, and you will get the alert call on your phone.
We can't hear it here. Yeah, what if they can't hear? What about for the impaired? What do you do for
If you are registered, I'm sure there's ways they send alerts to all kind of, even if you're impaired, have hearing impairments, if you use a cell phone, there are ways the message can still be sent. So It will vibrate, whatever, and then you will get the message.
The only thing I can tell you about tornadoes is you have so little time, there is nowhere to go except to an inside room that has no windows in your own home. Don't go next door. Okay?
Yeah, get into a space, if it's a closet, that has no windows and as confined as you can get. Sometimes people will get in their bathtub, but depending on where your bathtub is located, and take, if you can pull a mattress and take it with you and put it over you from wherever you are to protect you from things that might be falling. Tornadoes come quick, and you don't have time to get out of your home, so you have to try to shelter in place as safely as you can. Bottled water, how long is it good for?
There's an expiration date on the packaging.
Yeah, there'll be a date on there, but it'll last a long time. A long time. As long as you didn't open it. I'm not sure about beer and alcohol. Somebody asked me that this morning. That's going to be based on your personal preferences, how much of that you need.
I have a suggestion. If you want to book your motels and stuff like that, do not go through Trivago or things like that, because when you get there, they will say, we don't have your reservation. We didn't get it. So go directly to a hotel chain number,
Right.
and call and get your reservations.
Yes, if it's someone else, we talked about that a couple of days ago. If you're going to go to a hotel, you need to call that hotel directly to make your reservations. Because if you register through a third party and they get booked up before you show up, you may not have a room. Call the hotel directly to book your room. And price gouging is against the law. If they're extra charging for gas or plywood or hotel rooms, that is against the law, and you need to report that. There is a number to report that. I don't know what that number is, but there is a number to report price gouging to the government, and they will take care of that. Now, that's not necessarily going to help you when you're standing there trying to check into your hotel room, but that is against the law. So if a room is normally $100 a night and they're trying to charge you $200, that is against the law, okay? And that needs to be reported.
Yeah, what's the total capacity on all of your evacuation centers?
Shelters, the capacity, they're all different, but I don't even know that number.
It looks to me that you've got 47, and even if there was 5,000 capacity in each one of those, it's still only like...
That's why it's the
Exactly,
last
which
choice.
is why we tell people to shelter in place if they can. That is your best option. If we had some sort of mass casualty disaster where everyone in our county needed to evacuate, we could not hold them in our shelters. It would not. We don't have enough shelter space, and we don't have enough shelter staff to do that. But that is why that is your last option. If you have a friend that you can go to that's in a safe location, that is a better option. A house, yes. Any other questions over here? A battery charger for your cell phone that works in the car, if you don't already have one, that's an excellent idea. And I had to do that during Hurricane Irma, but also keep in mind, if you got to run your car while you're charging your battery, so don't use up all your gas. That was my nap time. I could turn on the air conditioning, charge my phone, and take a nap until my phone was charged. But you've got to be cautious because you'll run the gas out of your car trying to charge your cell phone.
What about leaving the windows up and having the gas running? You don't get fumes or anything?
Not if it's in park. You're not going to get fumes in there.
And we're in
The
carports.
car's cranked.
We're in carports mostly.
There are portable chargers that you can plug into your phone, and you can charge your battery 3 or 4 times off portable chargers. There's all sorts of things like that. So look into getting some of that stuff. There's what? Solar chargers. Well, that works because you know we got sunshine, right? Any
Thank you,
other
Kathy.
questions?
Let's give Kathy a round of applause.
We got a
I think
question.
we've got- Bob.
You had talked about reviewing
homeowners insurance. For the new people, when you do have insurance, you take it for granted that your carport and your golf cart is insured. In reality, it's not. Your main home is insured. So check the policy, check with your agent, because you may find that your carport, which is going to be the first thing that's going to blow away, and your golf cart.
Review your coverage on everything. That's the best thing to do.
Any other questions? Thank you guys for having us
Kathy.
out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've seen people putting it in Tupperware.
Oh, yeah, getting a gas can on there.